Hello and welcome back to Falling Walls Breakthrough Conversations, your opportunity to interact with global leaders, outstanding scientists, emerging innovators and science entrepreneurs to talk about their individual research, their career paths and their experiences. As always, we'd really appreciate some interaction from our digital audience, so if you have a question to ask, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. You'll be spotlighted, which means you'll be brought to the screen, unmuted, and then you'll be invited to ask your question. If you have any technical questions, please add them into the chat box and our technical moderators will get back to you. My name's Nicola Jones, and I'm the Head of Publishing for the Springer Nature SDG programme. And I'm joined for the next 25 minutes by Philippe Tanguy. Philippe is the president of Polytechnique Montreal Technological University and an expert in hydrogen and economy decarbonisation. He's worked with government in shaping the energy transition and industry electrification strategy. And prior to joining Polytechnique, he was an R&D executive for the energy company Total Energies in Paris and Berlin. He's worked on international R&D corporate strategy, relating to the energy transition, the hydrogen economy and the energy-water environment nexus. And with COP26 going on in Glasgow at the moment, this is all extremely topical material. Indeed. So I will start with a question about the COP, if I may. Last week in Glasgow, the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda was launched. And one of the breakthroughs aimed to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement was to ensure that affordable, renewable and low carbon hydrogen is globally available by 2030. So my question to you then is, what will it take to make this happen?
Oh, what an easy question. A lot of goodwill, I believe. No, I mean, decisions are important. That's very clear. They show the lead. They show the direction that we all should follow. At the end of the day, those projects will be implemented by industry. So, you know, for a company to invest into green hydrogen, or carbon-free hydrogen, should I say, well, first you need attractive projects. And things that make sense, that can make a difference. The second one certainly is that those projects must be investable. So you need the right legal framework, you need the right incentives. Government have to play a role there, because you know, government's role is to manage a society in a sense, and they can influence decision, of course, by regulations, by taxations, by incentives. They put in place programs, and of course, they have the legal framework. And I don't know any company that would invest into a project if the legal framework is not stable and well defined. So this is an important role for government. And the third one, of course, your project has to be bankable. You have to find the money somewhere. And there is a lot of changes in the capital markets those days. Certainly, you have genuine taste for more greener projects from the financial market. That's clear. You also have a lot of influence from the civil society, you and me, on the way they use our money to build on the future. And companies, of course, understand that very well. And so they need to propose projects that are really in phase and well aligned with what the markets are ready to finance. So, yes, there are a lot of ingredients to be successful. Hopefully we're on the right track.
Well then, to follow up on that, where do you think the barriers are at the moment? What's in the way?
Well, there are many barriers. One, I would say, green hydrogen is still burgeoning. There are no volumes at all. I mean, hydrogen right now is manufactured mainly from natural gas. So you break the molecule by catalytic reforming of water and methane. And at the end, you get a heavy carbon footprint. And if you look at green hydrogen, I mean, it's probably less than a few percent, and I'm probably very optimistic. So how do we move from what we have to what we should be? Well, green hydrogen will be produced by electrolysis. So we need carbon-free energy, so renewable, and we need a huge amount of it. And the second thing we need are electrolyzers. And those electrolyzers, they exist, but we need to make them bigger, and we certainly need to make them in a much larger number. So it's really manufacturing scalability, should I say, is very important, and deployment. And that is not something that you can achieve overnight.
And it speaks to the point you made earlier about how industry needs to be involved in this transition. And of course, you've worked in industry as well as in academia. Have you, how have you seen attitudes change towards moving towards sustainable energy, both sectors?
Yeah. Well, the attitude has changed a lot. When I moved from the university to Total in 2009, and Total was, I would say, at the very beginning of its thinking. Total had acquired already SunPower. It's a solar photovoltaic company in California. Was very serious about it, but it was still, I would say, a company based on oil and gas. And with time, you have seen two things. And I'm talking about Total, but they are more or less all like this. One is slowly moving away from oil to more gas. That's very clear, where the carbon footprint is much smaller. And the second one is being much more serious with renewable energy, meaning that those oil and gas companies are slowly moving toward being power companies. So in fact, they are stepping on the traditional power company, and we'll see who wins at the end of the day. But that's something which is important to understand. And in the future, let's say in the 10 coming years, you will see probably in many of, at least the European oil and gas companies, a blend of natural gas-based assets and probably wind energy for Europe projects. And on the longer term, I can't really say. Probably oil and gas will be there, but more like non-energy applications, in the chemical industry, for instance, or the solvent, or all the chemical intermediates. And the energy part will be probably mainly based on renewables, and probably not on nuclear, at least for those companies.
Interesting. And so what do you think is the timescale for energy transition?
Ooh. When you look at the history of energy, I would say every period lasts at least 40 years. You know, and it's probably the minimum amount of time you need to really completely amortize what you have invested. So we do not have 40 years ahead of us. So we have to accelerate. We have never done that in the past, never. So we'll see how it works. I would say the transition has already begun. Probably, as I was mentioning, 2010 is kind of tipping point. So I believe by 2030 we will have already well advanced this transition. And I would say maybe apart from some non-OECD country oil companies which are still lagging behind, I would say that most companies in the Western world, at least all the OECD world, has already started to move, even in the US.
I think that's quite a positive message, actually, to hear. But thinking about, you know, the way in which the world needs to move, because this is a global economy issue, are there parts of the world where there is, that may hold back the rest of the world? Are there, you know, how do we really address this as a global issue?
Well, the first thing we have to do is electrify. So it's, in fact, well, electrify as much as we can, that's clear, but work with decarbonizing the power industry. In the Western world, it has started. It is going to be more difficult in countries which have a lot of, let's say, fossil fuel buried in their underground, where they want to, well, use it for their own needs. So without mentioning too many, okay, let's take India. India has still a lot of new power plants, coal-based power plants being built. It's going to be difficult to explain to the Indian government and to Indian people that they should not exploit their coal while we have been doing it for 150 or 200 years. Okay. So having said that, now what do we do? Well, maybe in their case, carbon capture and sequestration, CCS, could be an option. That was not very popular for the coal industry in Germany, let's say 15 years ago. But there may be other reasons now why in those countries I'm mentioning it would be more attractive. So that's one thing. I was recently discussing with a colleague from Nigeria. He was telling me, you know, if we don't extract our oil and gas, our revenues in the country goes to zero immediately. And if we do that, then what about the social piece? So it's quite a challenge ahead of us, I can tell you. And we have to be realistic that it's going to take a lot of efforts from everyone, and it will certainly involve from our side sharing the technology that we have and transferring the technology for free. And in a sense, we're in a situation which is a little bit similar to COVID, you know? Because a year ago, we didn't have any vaccine, and there was a feeling of urgency across the planet, and we were able to, at least in the Western world, being able to get vaccine and get people vaccinated in good numbers in less than a year because it was felt as something urgent. So if we are serious about climate change, and I believe we should, then we have shown that it's already possible.
That's true. And I think the pandemic, if there's one thing that we can take as a positive, if there is such a thing from a pandemic, is that it has shown that global collaboration for the benefit of all can be mobilized actually really quickly as well and positively.
Yeah, but you have to understand that the scale is not the same and the amount of money is not the same. That's very clear. For COVID, you are talking about, let's say, billions of euro or dollars, doesn't matter. For the energy transition, you are talking about trillions. So you have 3 orders of magnitude. So yeah, the scale is different.
So I'd just like to remind our audience that you can ask a question directly to Philippe by using the raise hand function on Zoom. Now, you mentioned in reference to the conversation with your colleague in Nigeria about the social piece, and you've also mentioned previously about civil society and the role of civil society in pushing for the energy transition. Where do you see the impact of civil society and society more generally here? It seems as though it's kind of on both sides. There's a positive and there's potentially a negative.
Well, you have 2 things. One is social media, which have a capabilities of mobilizing people quite quickly. So it has an effect. We know that all that. The second one, you have your vote. And it's very clear that over the last 10 years, we have seen a lot of changes because of the 2 things. I mean, people are not voting, especially the young people, the way they're traditionally, I would say, voting for traditional parties, should I say. And the second one is social media, yes, have an effect. So beyond the effect of Greta Thunberg, it's more than that. I mean, we are, in fact, leaving a planet to the next generation, which is probably not so easy to cope with, well, depending where you live. But there are regions in the world which are really suffering much more than others from drought, from extreme climate events, probably from flood in the future as well. And you have people living there. You have young people living there, and they are very aware of what's happening. And sometimes they lack the sense of understanding that things take time to be changed. But this is not an excuse, and this is certainly not analysis paralysis, you know.
And you also mentioned the importance of, let's say, higher income countries who may have more developed technology sharing with lower income countries. Now, we've seen from the pandemic that the global collaboration resulted in vaccines. We've also seen that let's say rich countries made a commitment to provide vaccine to other countries. And we've also seen that in places like the United Kingdom, where I live, having vaccinated most of the population, the government's now providing boosters to British citizens. And the promise of vaccines to people in other countries has not really materialised. Why should we expect this should be different with renewable energy?
Yeah, it's a good question, because those technology belong to private companies that don't want to get competition from low-income country companies. So, and I can also understand this. So yeah, there is always two answers. There is you transfer your technology, but not the latest one. So you always keep advancing and innovating and researching so that you get always a few years of advance against your competition. That's possible. But you know, in the case of vaccine, you have, let's say, 2 or 3 major players. In the case of greener technology, clean technology, you have a plethora of players. So the world is very fragmented. So what is the one that you want to select, that you want to transfer? It might depend so much on the local context, on the local resources, on the local industrial infrastructure. Don't think there is a very general answer to this question. And I don't think either there is a recipe. It will be learning by doing. That's what I believe will happen.
And on a more positive note, what are the opportunities that will come with the transition to a hydrogen economy?
Nice jobs.
What do you mean by nice jobs? I have a nice job. I get to do this.
No, but when you are a young scientist or young engineer, and you know that you are going to work for something that make minimal harm to the environment, and that the type of industry you're working is very well accepted by the society, that generates a big smile on your face. So, yeah, certainly I would say it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to, I don't know whether it's to cure our environment, but at least to, let's say, decrease our footprint, or at least the negative footprint that we have. We all have a footprint, but negative footprint that we have. So, innovation, certainly, new way of working together, simply, I would say, new fields of discovery. I believe we have probably just seen the tip of the iceberg on these things. So, yeah, I wish I had 40 years less.
What would you do if you were starting out in your career at this point then? What would you do with those 40 years less?
No, I'm very happy what I did. No, but I mean, I would say the times are very exciting, and in a sense, it's a new revolution. You know, you have to understand that we are going to change an energy system in a short term, and in a sense, the energy system that we have has been built over 200 years. And now we have a few years, I'd say a few decades, but a few years ahead of us to change that. Wow, that's a challenge. So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With great challenges come great opportunities, I guess.
Exactly.
Just one final question then as we wrap up. We've talked about the role of industry and we've talked about the role of government. We've talked a little bit about the role of academia. Do you see a role for startups in helping facilitate and, I guess, speed up the transition?
I would say they are almost in the middle of the new era we are in. I can see in my own university the quality and the spirit and I would say the innovative spirit of the younger generation and the excitement toward working, greening I would say our way of doing things, whether it's in energy, whether it's the field of water, whether the field of chemicals. I mean, most of it is, in fact, the made by young people starting their company, young or less young, but at least really being in the middle of it. So the entrepreneurship or the entrepreneur spirit in this area is probably way higher than what we had in my generation when I was their age. It's not only the fashion of the day, it's more than that. It's because what they are looking at, they don't find it necessarily in existing companies. So they say, fine, then I'm going to create my own. With, of course, all the difficulties and the hurdles you can think of while creating a company. And the first one being to find out the money.
Yes. And I could talk about this with you for another 25 minutes, if not longer. I know you have to leave to go and join the table on sustainable hydrogen economy this afternoon. And we're just about coming to the end of our time. So thank you very much, Philippe, for being so open and for taking all of those questions. Thank you very much to our audience. We will be back again on the half hour for our final Falling Walls conversation of the day.